Our story kicks off in a world completely shattered by the Awakening, a desolate, frozen wasteland. A crew of heavy hitters had assembled. Their target? The Death's Lair, a legendary S-rank dungeon. Rumor had it an ancient entity was lurking inside. This dungeon was the OG, the very first to pop up on planet Azure, and it had remained undefeated for decades. The entrance itself was a graveyard, littered with the bones of countless masters, who walked in and never walked out. But today was different. A warrior named Suman had just challenged the Death's Lair all by himself. After a brutal throwdown, he actually emerged victorious, having taken down the god-tier monster that called the dungeon home. But as he stumbled toward the exit, completely drained, no hero's welcome awaited him. Instead, he was ambushed, jumped by the very men he once called allies. They closed in, their intentions dripping with hostility. One of them sneered, telling him to quit struggling and fork over the divine artifact he'd just snagged. Another declared his fate was sealed, sarcastically dubbing him the hero of humanity and promising a swift end if he just surrendered. Energy crackled around Suman's body as the betrayal sank in. He finally understood their scheme. They had waited for him to clear the dungeon just so they could swoop in and jack the prize. He had to wonder if this backstabbing was the plan all along. From the crowd of snakes, a blonde-haired dude named Santan stepped forward, drawing his blade, which pulsed with blue lightning. He faced his old friend and demanded the divine artifact, playing the old friends card and offering to spare his life in exchange. With a smug grin, he vowed to crush what little power Suman had left. Clutching his own fiery red sword, Suman cursed his own foolishness. He had treated these guys like brothers since they were kids, fighting side by side for years, never once suspecting the poison hiding behind their smiles. Seething with betrayal, he decided he wasn't going down quietly. He raised his weapon, unleashing a massive blast of energy. A vortex of red and purple erupted from the divine artifact, triggering a huge detonation. Standing his ground, he stared down his former comrades, making it crystal clear. If they wanted the Ring of the Dao's challenge, they were going to have to pry it from his cold, dead hands. He doubted any of them were strong enough, but the sheer power radiating from him left his old allies completely floored. One of Santan's goons lost his nerve, screaming that they should just kill him already. Santan, however, urged caution, warning them that rushing in while Suman was wielding that artifact would be a fatal mistake. As the tense standoff dragged on, a new figure descended from the sky, calling Suman's name. He looked up, shocked to see a woman with vibrant pink hair, named Xiaoman, soaring toward him. She threw her arms around him in a tight hug, claiming she'd heard whispers of a plot against him, and had rushed over, worried sick. Suman tried to calm her, assuring her everything was fine and that these wannabes were no match for him. Still, he couldn't shake a creeping doubt. How did they manage to track him so perfectly? As he mulled it over, Santan flashed a knowing, wicked grin. In that exact moment, a searing pain shot through Suman's back. Xiaoman had plunged a dagger into him. She whispered that she was the one who sold him out. In utter disbelief, Suman stared at her, his eyes locking onto the glowing red magic circle on the hand gripping the dagger. He couldn't process it. Why would she, of all people, do this? Across the battlefield, Santan roared in triumph, declaring the final catalyst was complete. He then bellowed an order to activate the imprisonment formation. Instantly, a massive red sigil blazed to life in the sky above Sumin, locking him in place. From the fresh wound, glowing red chains erupted, coiling around his body and draining his power. He recognized the cursed mark as one of Xiaoman's. The chilling realization hit him. She had been plotting this betrayal for a long, long time. Santan sauntered over and slid an arm around Xiaoman. He gloated, explaining that the sealing formation was custom-made just for him, designed to completely shut down his power. Xiaoman added, her voice dripping with ice, that she was always on Santan's side. She made it brutally clear that his only purpose was to be their tool. Because of his rare 9-star talent, they needed him to retrieve the divine artifact. Shattered and betrayed, Suman collapsed to his knees, letting out a scream of pure rage and agony. With Suman chained and helpless, Santan ordered his men to finish the job and take the artifact. They moved in, their weapons glowing, ready for the kill. But just as they were about to strike, the ground beneath them exploded. A colossal skeletal hand clawed its way out of the earth, followed by a tide of skeleton warriors that swarmed the attackers, shielding Sumin. He watched in total shock, wondering who could possibly have come to his rescue. His savior was a woman with pale lilac hair, draped in a hooded cloak. Sumin recognized her instantly, Gija, a necromancer. She touched down right between Sumin and his enemies, clutching a powerful staff. She urged him not to give up, her eyes blazing with the fierce determination to stop these villains from getting their hands on the artifact. The Santan artifact sneered at her arrival, writing her off as just another fool who'd come to die. He gloated that with dozens of masters on his side, not even the great emperor could bail Suming out. Santan's forces slammed into the summons, Ji Yao's undead legions. Enraged, Santan rocketed straight for her, hell-bent on slaughtering anyone who got in his way. As Ji Yao battled, one of Santan's men shouted a warning about an attack from her flank, but it was a complete fake-out. She whipped around in surprise just as Santan closed in on her. He brandished his weapon, which was wrapped in lightning, and struck without a shred of hesitation. Su Ming, still pinned down, could only watch in sheer horror as the blow connected. With Ji Yao taken out, Santan saw his chance. He let Su Ming know that caring for others was a waste of time and that his turn to die had come. He then drove his glowing blue sword deep into Su Ming's chest. Leaning in, he offered one last cruel choice: surrender the artifact and maybe, just maybe, he'd spare his life. However, Su Ming had one final act of defiance, gripping the magical chains. With blood spilling from his mouth, he glared at his betrayers with absolute hatred. He saw them as nothing but monsters beyond saving. As a terrifying red and black energy began to build inside him in one last, desperate gamble, Su Ming unleashed a self-destruct skill, a god-tier technique known as Annihilation Burst. A catastrophic explosion ripped out from his body, forcing Santan and Xiaoman to scramble back in alarm. In the blast's aftermath, the battlefield fell silent. Grievously wounded, Su Ming dragged himself to Ji Yao and held her body. Broken, he was filled with profound regret, wondering why she had come for him when he had failed her so many times. Ji Yao, with a faint, peaceful smile, lifted her hand to touch his face, accepting that if this was their end, they would die together. As her life slipped away, Su Ming found a final reserve of strength. His sword materialized and plunged into the ground, before him like a final declaration against his enemies. Cradling Ji Yao's body, Su Ming, the Godslayer, made an oath, a solemn one. He declared that if he were reborn, he would hunt down Xiaoman and Santan and mercilessly tear them to pieces. His betrayers watched from a distance, confused. Then, a look of shocking realization dawned on Santan's face. He understood Su Ming's desperate plan. Su Ming was going to take the divine artifact with him to the grave, dragging it into the abyss of the death lair so they could never get their hands on it. With his final vow made, he laid it all out. If they wanted the divine artifact, they would have to come and get it. Then, he leaped off the cliff. Clutching Ji Yao, he fell into the chaotic energy below. On his hand, the ring of the Tao's challenge flared with an intense, blinding golden light. The world dissolved into whiteness. Su Ming's hand fell limp, as if life had finally abandoned him. And yet, his consciousness snapped back into focus. He was no longer in an abyss, but staring up at a clear blue sky and a familiar school building. Utterly lost, his confusion deepened when he heard a voice. Crackling from a microphone, an announcer was calling out the results of the ceremony. The 127th awakening at the First Suanjing Academy. It was reported that a student named Wang Yang had successfully awakened, although his new class was Enchanter, a lifestyle class with 0 combat abilities. Su Ming, now a young student once more, found himself standing. In a crowd of other teenagers, he overheard comments around him saying that the school's luck seemed to be trash that year. The words awakening ceremony hit him like a lightning bolt. A familiar feeling washed over him as he realized with total shock that he had gone back in time. He was 18 again, right on the day of his own awakening ceremony. As he stood among the students, memories of that day came flooding back with crystal clarity. He recognized Wan Qian, who he remembered was nicknamed Fatty. He remembered that in his past life, he had also become an enchanter, confirming that this was no dream. To test his memory further, he recalled the next students in line. He knew Li Suyang would awaken as a warrior, a 2-star, that Chen Ju's awakening would be a bust, and that Sun Li would become a battle mage. The events played out exactly as he remembered. Li Suyang celebrated his awakening as a warrior. Then Chen Ju broke down in tears after failing, and after that, Sun Li awakened as a combat mage, seeing everything align perfectly with his memories. Any doubt left in his mind completely evaporated. A confident smirk played on his lips as he accepted that he was truly reborn. However, his expression quickly morphed into one of intense fury as the painful memories of the betrayal at the hands of Santan and Xiaoman tore through his mind. He knew this second chance was a gift from the heavens, an opportunity to fix his past and get revenge for all of his regrets. His thoughts, but the crowd's roar from the stage cut them short. A much younger Santang was coming to, bathed in a breathtaking purple aura. The announcer's voice cracked with excitement, declaring that Santang had awakened a rare hidden combat class, Demonic Puppet Warrior, rocking a ridiculously powerful 8-star innate attribute. A wave of excited whispers swept through the students. An awakening this epic was totally expected from the young master of the legendary Yang family. Hearing this, Su-ming could only glare at his future rival, with a cold, burning hatred as the announcer hyped up the school's brand new genius. Su-ming felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned, and his world froze. It was a young Ji Yao, perfectly healthy and vibrant in her school uniform. She looked like she'd been trying to find him. Seeing his jaw on the floor, she just looked confused. Overwhelmed, Su-ming snapped back to reality. The haunting image of Ji Yao dying in his arms flashed through his mind, and a genuine, gentle smile spread across his face. The relief of seeing her again was just everything. Just then, the announcer called the next student to the stage, Ji Yao. Startled, she hurried up and placed her hand on the celestial stele, a massive, ancient artifact that crackled with blue energy. The second she touched it, a colossal wave of power erupted from the stone, completely engulfing her. The announcer, his voice trembling with sheer awe, declared that Ji Yao had awakened a hidden combat class, Necromancer, with a 7-star attribute. The other students were floored, their murmurs filled with total disbelief. Su-ming watched the whole scene unfold with a calm, confident smirk, knowing everything was going down exactly as he had foreseen. Now, it was his turn. The announcer called out for Su-ming. As he walked toward the stage, Ji Yao wished him good luck. The other students weren't nearly as supportive, whispering that there was no way a third hidden class would pop up, especially not for some orphan like Su-ming. The scene pulls back, giving us the bigger picture. This is planet Azure, within the dragon. Nation, a world run by the powerful awakened. Decades ago, the awakening phenomenon had changed everything. Ever since, every person who hits 18 years old goes through a ceremony to become one of the awakened. These individuals completely reshape the world, gaining the power to bend reality and stack up insane amounts of wealth. But that kind of power came with a price. The awakened faced constant danger, battling ferocious beasts, and diving into monster-infested dungeons. As he approached the celestial stele, Su-ming remembered his past life as an orphan. He'd scraped by on subsidies and scholarships. The day of his first awakening, he had been blessed by the heavens, and a magnificent phenomenon had descended, unlocking an insanely rare 9-star innate attribute, along with a legendary class known as the God Slayer. Now, standing on the stage of his second life, he was determined to forge a new destiny. He reached out for the awakening artifact, ready to make sure that today, everyone would see him in a completely different light. In that instant, a massive explosion of purple and pink energy detonated from the stele, creating a spectacular light show in the sky. The announcer stared, completely shook, wondering if this energy signaled the birth of a genius, with a 9-star attribute, or maybe something even crazier. Ji Yao and the other students were just as stunned. Su-ming braced himself for the familiar surge of runes from his original awakening, but this time, something was different. A glowing blue symbol materialized on his chest, and from it, the divine artifact he had dyed with the Tao's challenge ring phased into existence. He was absolutely floored, realizing the ring had somehow traveled back in time with him. Before he could even process it, something else went down. A strange sensation shot through his body as a holographic screen flickered to life in front of him. A system notification announced, "The Ultimate God Slayer system is successfully binding." It then informed him that a new class had been assigned and his awakening was a success. But instead of his old class, he'd been given something way more OP, a mythic tier class called Sword God. Su-ming could only stare, completely mind-blown, questioning if a mythic class even existed and what this insane title he'd just received truly meant. The immense red energy blasting from his awakening left everyone speechless. The announcer, still reeling, was at a loss for what kind of class could trigger a phenomenon like this. Down in the crowd, students were debating what it all meant. Some were worried that if it was a non-combat class, Su-ming would be totally screwed. Santang just scoffed at the idea, certain that a vision this powerful couldn't be anything but legendary. He wasn't even a support class, but just watching from the sidelines, sweat was pouring down his face from the sheer pressure, radiating from Su-ming. It was so intense, the guy was literally paralyzed. Meanwhile, Su-ming just stood there, completely unfazed, at the center of this energy storm, just downloading all the info popping up on the golden panel right in front of him. And it was confirmed. His awakened class was Sword God, a totally different path from the God Slayer he was in his past life. He tapped the system interface, and a quick ID scan kicked in, confirming his identity, Su-ming. And then his new stats flashed on screen. Class, Sword God, and he had a gold tier talent called Universal Ascension, which gave him the power to level up, or evolve literally anything. Su-ming was absolutely floored. He instantly knew a gold tier talent was leagues above even the legendary 9-star class he'd unlocked before. A confident smirk crept onto his face. As it hit him, this new power of his blew any so-called divine class out of the water. Hyped to see his new skills, He swiped open the ability interface, but his excitement instantly flatlined into shock. The screen was just empty, zero progress. A single message mocked him, no skills awakened. Rage surged through Su Ming. He gripped the holographic panel, screaming in his head, how is it even possible for a gold rank talent to come with zero skills? While he was spiraling, the crowd started getting restless, totally confused by the holdup. Finally, the announcer broke the silence, asking if his awakening was, like, done. Su Ming glared at the empty interface, his blood boiling. He couldn't believe it. After awakening a supposedly god-tier class, he had nothing to show for it. It felt like the system was straight up trolling him. Then, a new message flashed on the panel, saying his feedback was received and that the guide would now resume. A new prompt directed his eyes toward the challenge of the Dao ring hovering right in front of him. Confused, Su Ming just stared at the ring. As it started to glow, the system's voice echoed, divine artifact successfully identified. In that exact moment, the system panel flared to life, and a massive pillar of golden light erupted from where Su Ming stood, rocketing into the sky. A powerful shockwave blasted outwards, forcing the announcer, who was also the Academy's headmaster, to dig in his heels just to stay upright. High above the celestial stelae, a gigantic, multicolored star materialized with the number 10 blazing in its center. The headmaster's eyes went wide with disbelief. He recognized that symbol instantly, a 10-star innate attribute. His voice trembling, thick with pure shock, he announced that Su Ming had awakened a 10-star hidden class, Swordmaster. The crowd absolutely exploded into chaos, screaming about his heaven-defying talent, a level only the nation's top dogs ever reached. Shantan just stood there in dead silence, completely shell-shocked. Another student muttered that Shantan's 8-star awakening already felt insane, but Su Ming just casually dropped a max-level attribute of 10 stars. The headmaster, absolutely beaming, declared this a legendary year for their academy. Not only had they seen multiple hidden classes pop up, but now a true prodigy with a 10-star attribute had been born. He admitted that even though the Swordmaster class wasn't exactly S-tier, with an innate talent that high, Su Ming's future potential was basically limitless. As a reward, he announced he would personally gift him a full set of cultivation support items. But not everyone was hyped. Whispers of disappointment started snaking through the crowd. Some students were already calling it a total waste of talent, explaining that the Swordmaster was basically a bottom-tier job. A few tried to stick up for him, arguing that with enough grinding, a Swordmaster could become a solid damage dealer. And, with Su Ming's talent, for sure, he could pull it off. Up on the stage, Su Ming heard every single one of those hater comments. His head tilted slightly, his expression darkening, thinking about how everyone was already writing off his Swordmaster class as useless. As the crowd kept whispering, Ji Yao rushed up to him, a bright smile on her face. She congratulated him on his awakening. Su Ming just gave a calm reply. Ji Yao told him to just ignore all the clueless haters, reminding him that awakening a 10-star talent was an incredible feat. She admitted that, yeah, the Swordmaster class might be weak in the early game, but she was convinced that with his talent, it wouldn't be an issue for him. Su Ming shot her a warm smile and thanked her, promising that their comments didn't get to him at all. Then, cryptically, he thought to himself that everyone sleeping on him was exactly what he wanted, leaving Ji Yao totally confused. The ceremony rolled on as the announcer called up the next student. The crowd erupted in cheers for Xiao Man, the school's most popular girl, as San Tang hyped her up from the sidelines. Ji Zhao commented on her insane popularity, but Su Ming was completely silent. Instead of watching, he just turned his back and started to walk away. A confused Ji Zhao called out to him, reminding him that the ceremony wasn't even over. Su Ming's reply was ice cold, delivered without a single glance back, saying he just wasn't interested. As he walked away, agonizing memories from his past life came crashing into his mind. He remembered how Xiaoman had played him, only to betray him and end his life without a shred of hesitation. He also recalled the vow he swore as he died, hardening his resolve to get his revenge in this new life. Later, Su Ming walked through the city, noticing the world looked exactly as he remembered. He knew, however, that so much had changed. On top of his new class, he scanned the system and found a skill called Total Concealment. This legendary ability allowed him to hide or completely alter the info on his gear, class, and skills. He recognized it instantly as one of the 4 skills he'd carried over from his past life. This discovery triggered another memory, the glowing ring from the Dao Challenge. He stared at his hands in disbelief, finally realizing the divine artifact had actually time-traveled with him. As he focused on the ring, the system panel flared to life once more. It announced that the divine artifact was now loading. As the ring finished integrating, a new message declared that Su Ming had inherited a portion of the abilities from his former divine tier class. Su Ming could only watch everything in utter shock, wondering how it was even possible to get skills from his past class when his new one was God of Sword. A detailed status screen materialized, showing his name, Suming, level 1, with a balanced set of base stats. His class was confirmed, God of Sword, a world-unique mythic class, and his talent was Universal Ascension. In the skills section, 4 abilities were now listed: Godslayer's Blade, Total Concealment, Shadow Step, and Insightful Eye. Armed with this new intel, Suming began to piece together a plan. He recalled an old saying that a person who carries a treasure is just asking for trouble. To avoid ever being used by others again, and because he wasn't nearly strong enough yet, he knew he had to move carefully, even though his 10-star talent was impossible to conceal. He decided to hide all information connected to his true mythic class, the God of Sword. He swore he would take full advantage of this second chance and not repeat the blunders of his past life. He knew from experience that the beginner dungeon challenge would drop on the second day after the awakening ceremony. With his knowledge and skills, he was positive that the dungeon wouldn't pose any threat at all. His objective was to level up faster than everyone else and secure better gear. To make that happen, he resolved to challenge the dungeon's hardest boss right from the start. First, though, he needed a decent weapon. Meanwhile, in a lavish suite at the top of a skyscraper known as the Palace, a completely different scene was unfolding. Santang and Xiaoman were together. Xiaoman teased Santang for whisking her away to a place like this immediately after the ceremony. Annoyed, Santang dodged the subject and whined about how Suming had stolen all the attention. But Xiaoman was already scheming. She told him not to get so bent out of shape, explaining that even though Suming only awakened as a swordmaster, his awakening attribute was off the charts. She assured him that Suming would prove to be incredibly valuable for them to use later. Intrigued, Santang demanded to know what she was talking about. Xiaoman just smirked and showed him something on her phone. The moment he saw it, Santang's expression flipped from annoyed to completely stunned. With a cold, calculating look in her eyes, Xiaoman laid out her plan. She was certain that if they offered Suming a small incentive, he would take the bait. Then, just as it had happened before, they could manipulate him for their own gain. Sticking to his own strategy, Suming arrived at a massive skyscraper that housed a weapons marketplace. He rode the elevator to the 12th floor, where he was greeted by an employee of the Weapons Emporium. As he walked across the floor, he saw it was crammed with newly awakened students, all getting ready for the beginner dungeon trial. He overheard several of them complaining about being broke, realizing that many would have to grind in dungeons just to afford a half-decent weapon. Suming's attention was suddenly snagged by a crowd of people gathered around a single display case. They were all admiring a brilliant blue sword called the Tyrant's Frostblade, a diamond rank weapon, that was supposedly forged by an expert player from the Grand Swordsman class. The crowd was buzzing about its incredible power. It could freeze a monster's blood solid, but the 1-to-million adventurer coin price tag was enough to intimidate anyone. A small smirk played on Suming's lips. He recalled from his past life that the blade was a complete fake, and the merchants peddling it were eventually thrown in jail. His thoughts were shattered when a sharply dressed woman with short gray hair, flanked by 2 bodyguards, strode toward him. She confirmed he was Suming and introduced herself as Yang Lan, the vice director of the Yang Nan group, sliding him her business card. Suming accepted it, pointing out that he didn't believe they'd ever met. Yang Lan brushed off the remark and, projecting her voice for everyone to hear, announced that the Yang group was covering all his expenses for the day. She then revealed her desire for a favor, signaling one of her guards to display a photograph. An image of a smiling young woman with her eyes obscured, surrounded by white flowers, appeared. Yang Lan revealed this was her sister, her younger sister, Yang Juning, who happened to attend the same school and had also just awakened her powers. She confessed to having already investigated Suming's awakening, knowing full well about his 10-star talent. She reasoned that with his level of power, the beginner's dungeon would be a complete cakewalk. She also noted that only the newly awakened were allowed to enter. And then she finally made a request. She wanted Suming to party up with her sister and act as her protector. The goal was for her to clear the trial safely. After a brief pause, Suming flat out rejected her offer. Then he turned his back to walk away. A shocked Yang Lan offered him his pick of any weapon in the shop if he would just agree, but he gave her no response. Seething with rage, she thought that some broke, lucky student had absolutely no right to refuse her. Just as Yang Lan was about to lose her composure, Suming stopped dead in his tracks, his expression serene. He pivoted and pointed at the most ridiculously expensive weapon in the store, declaring he would choose the Tyrant's Frostblade, the counterfeit sword valued at 1,000,000 coins. Yang Lan was livid, certain he was now deliberately trying to extort her. She figured he was just trying to be difficult and doubted someone like him was actually worth that kind of money. Suming simply reminded her that she was the one who offered him any weapon he wanted. He made it crystal clear, if she wasn't going to honor her word, the deal was off. With a confident grin, Su Ming tacked on one last piece of advice, suggesting her sister had better prepare with everything she had. The message was loud and clear. There are some things that money simply cannot buy. Unexpectedly, Yang Lan's fury melted away, replaced by an intrigued smile. She found Su Ming genuinely interesting, and she admitted to herself that she had overstepped. With that, she and her bodyguards departed. The onlookers were left speechless, whispering about how that student had just played the powerful figures from the Yang group. A short while later, Su Ming's phone vibrated with an incoming text. A quick glance revealed it was from Xiaoman. The message was precisely as he remembered it. She was claiming she'd had a change of heart. She hinted at having feelings for him and asked him to meet her that night on the roof of the academy building. Su Ming stared at the text with cold amusement, noting that even though he hadn't awakened as a godslayer, Xiaoman's manipulative games were exactly the same. Remembering his vow for revenge, he replied, agreeing to the meeting. With that business settled, Su Ming refocused on acquiring a weapon. He approached a clerk and inquired about a display case showing off irregular, rock-like objects known as sword stones. The employee explained that those stones had a chance to produce a silver rank weapon, but she cautiously warned that it was entirely based on luck and that most of them only held very low-level weapons. To her astonishment, Su Ming informed her that was exactly what he was hoping for. Su Ming figured, why waste a fortune on a silver weapon that would soon become outdated when he could gamble on getting one from a stone for cheap? For him, however, it wasn't a gamble in the slightest. The truth was, he could actually see the data inside the stones. This was all thanks to another skill he'd carried over from his past life, the Eye of Insight. A system panel explained that this legendary ability allowed him to perceive the true nature of things. Using this power, Su Ming picked up one of the stones with absolute confidence. He knew a standard silver weapon went for hundreds, if not thousands, of adventurer coins. But snatching one from a cheap stone was an unbelievable opportunity for someone with no cash like him. As he sat down with the weapon stone in hand, his actions began to draw the attention of other students. One of them, a blonde-haired kid, recognized him as the guy who had just shut down the powerful Yang group. The kid and his two friends swaggered over to Su Ming with mocking grins, laughing that he'd rejected a free ride from a massive corporation, all to gamble on a worthless rock. They called him a moron and laughed relentlessly. Still, Su Ming remained completely unbothered. He recognized the blonde bully as Yang Ding, a rich brat who, in his past life, loved to intimidate lower-level students. Seeing how annoying they were being, Su Ming decided to have a little fun at their expense. He coolly turned to Yang Din and laid down a wager of 5,000 adventurer coins, claiming he could pull a silver rank weapon from the junkstone he was holding. After a beat of stunned silence, Yang Din and his crew erupted in laughter, absolutely convinced Su Ming had lost his mind. Yang Din scoffed, figuring the odds of that stone being anything but trash were basically zero, and thinking he'd never seen somebody so hyped to just burn their cash. But Su Ming didn't flinch, confident they'd see who was really losing coins soon enough. Yang Din jumped at the bet, and a crowd of onlookers started to gather, curious to see the show. Su Ming decided to crack the stone open right then and there, no backing down. With all eyes on him, he activated his insight eye. His vision warped, revealing a glowing red sword, hidden deep within the rock. Without a second thought, he shattered the stone with a single, powerful strike. A blinding crimson light exploded outward as a mighty sword shot out from the fragments. Yang Din, his friends, and everyone else in the crowd just froze, watching in disbelief as Su Ming casually caught the weapon by its hilt. The system pinged, identifying the weapon, a crimson, black iron sword, a low silver rank weapon with a special effect called Crimson Drinker, capable of absorbing the blood of monsters to heal its wielder. Amid the dead silence, Su Ming held up the blade and gave it a nod good quality. A cold, determined look flashed in his eyes as he thought this would be perfect for his meeting with Xiaoman. Later that night, Yang Din and his buddies were still glued to the spot, completely unable to process that Su Ming had actually pulled a silver rank weapon from a worthless rock. Su Ming examined the blade again, thinking it was pretty sick, especially with its lifesteal ability. That meant he could probably skip bringing a healer for the next dungeon trial. A system panel confirmed it, a silver rank black steel sword, with 10% life absorption. As Yang Din stared in fear, Su Ming leveled the sword at him, reminding him that a bet's a bet, and those 5,000 coins were his now. Utterly defeated, Yang Din transferred the money and stormed off in total humiliation, vowing he'd never forget this. Su Ming figured the experience would teach him a lesson about making such careless bets. The shop assistant watched the whole thing unfold, stunned, knowing it had been years since anyone got a real weapon out of one of those stones. With his new winnings, Su Ming walked back to the counter to buy a sheath and asked if 5,000 coins would cover it. The assistant confirmed it was more than enough. Su Ming picked out an ornate, silver rank sheath that cut weapon degradation by 50%. He was satisfied, knowing it would seriously extend the sword's lifespan. As he held the sheathed weapon, a system notification popped up, asking if he wanted to activate a hidden feature called weapon manifestation. Su Ming decided to hold off, feeling like the timing wasn't right just yet. With a slight smirk, he thought he still needed to upgrade his new weapon's rank first. Later, while walking through a park, Su Ming thought about his situation and admitted that, despite awakening as a sword god, he still had 0 active class skills. However, his class came with a primal talent that was insanely overpowered, Universal Ascension. This talent let him upgrade the quality of any item, one single time, making his mythic class truly live up to the name. Gripping the sword, Su Ming decided to test that power now. The system announced the activation of Universal Ascension. The process was a success, and the Crimson Drinker effect was amplified. The sword began to pulse with an intense, fiery red aura. A final notification displayed the weapon's new stats. It was now a Crimson Black Steel sword of high, silver rank. Its main ability now drained blood on contact, and it had a brand new skill called Bloodthirst, which granted a temporary stat boost after slaying a monster. Su Ming was more than happy with the upgrade. With his preparations finally complete, he activated the hidden weapon manifestation, certain that the next day's starter dungeon was going to be a total cakewalk. That very night, Su Ming made his way to the rooftop of the academy building. He stood there, a lone figure silhouetted against the city's futuristic skyline, his new sword in his hand. Xiaoman was already waiting. When she saw him, she turned with a seductive smile, but the atmosphere instantly changed. Without a single word, Su Ming attacked. She barely dodged the strike, the blade slamming into the concrete ledge. Right where her head had been, Xiaoman froze, her mind reeling in utter disbelief at what just happened. Su Ming looked at her with absolute coldness, making it clear he was here for revenge. A painful memory from his past life surfaced in his mind, the very moment of his death, as he held a dying Ji Yao in his arms, with Xiaoman watching him without a shred of remorse. Xiaoman's face was a storm of confusion and raw fury. She couldn't process why Su Ming was acting like this. Just moments after accepting her confession, Su Ming stood like a statue, his expression locked in a hard, chilling silence. He stared her down with a cold smirk, knowing full well that this confession belonged to a lifetime that was no longer his. His thoughts spiraled backward, replaying their entire history. She had been the Academy's queen bee, while he was just a lone orphan, lingering in the shadows. He flashed back to the day after the first awakening ceremony, when she had approached him with that disarmingly kind smile. She had actually shown concern for him. For the first time, he felt like someone noticed he even existed. That feeling propelled him to confess his feelings over text, which blossomed into romantic dates and a relationship he desperately believed was genuine. But that entire illusion crumbled the moment he witnessed the memory of her with Zhang Tong, the ultimate symbol of her betrayal. Snapping back to the present, Su Ming's face twisted with rage as the reality crashed down on him. It had all been a calculated lie. Su Ming unleashed on her, accusing her of using him and cutting secret deals with Zhang Tong, making it clear he knew the entire, sordid truth. Xiaoman was completely shell-shocked and tried to deny the accusations, but Su Ming wasn't letting up. He knew she was fully aware of her own lies, and that her picture-perfect, elegant image was nothing but a carefully constructed facade. In his eyes, her true self was a hollow, shameless fraud. At that, Xiaoman's composure completely shattered. Her face contorted in a mask of pure fury as her mask finally dropped, her expression dripping with contempt for Su Ming. She made it painfully clear she'd always seen him as an inferior, snarling that without his talent, he wouldn't have been worthy of even speaking to her. She also spat that neither she nor Zhang Tong would ever let him get away with this. After taking her verbal assault, Su Ming fired back at her threats. With a mocking grin, he attacked her psyche, suggesting she should be far more worried about how this little scene would decimate her pure and perfect reputation. That final taunt sent her completely over the edge. Consumed by an uncontrollable rage, Xiaoman lunged for the sword. The one Su Ming had left plunged into the concrete, and she swung it at him without a shred of hesitation. As the blade sliced through the air toward him, Su Ming had a chilling flash of déjà vu in his past life. She had done the exact same thing. The only difference was, this time, he was ready for it. Just before the sword could strike him, crimson tendrils of energy erupted from the weapon, freezing it dead in midair. Xiaoman was paralyzed with shock, as the system confirmed the activation of the weapon's Crimson Drinker ability. The tendrils of red energy shot out from the sword, wrapping themselves around Xiaoman's body. Su Ming realized his trap had worked flawlessly. From the second he had marked her with the weapon's ability, her fate was sealed. One of the crimson threads shot directly at her face. She let out a piercing shriek of pain, her voice laced with despair as she felt her face get torn apart before she collapsed to the ground. Su-ming stood over her with absolute coldness, certain that she had brought every bit of this upon herself. He was about to mark this moment as the official beginning of his revenge, but she started screaming again, vowing she would have Zhongtong murder him. Su-ming showed zero reaction. He recalled his sword, which dematerialized back into his inventory, then turned his back on her and started to walk away. In his mind, the message was clear. Zhongtong could come for him any time. This attack was just a warning shot. As he left her a sobbing wreck on the rooftop, Su-ming thought to himself that the sword had also served to sever the last remaining ties of affection he had once valued so much. Later on, a notification popped up on his phone. It was a care package from the academy. The message was from Director Wang, who congratulated him on his awakening and sent him a bundle of rewards to prepare him for the initial dungeon. The package held a strengthening pill and a basic set of combat gear and 10,000 adventurer coins. The next morning at 6 a.m., Su-ming held the strengthening pill that the director had sent. He recognized the generosity, but suspected there was also a hint of pity for him awakening a class considered to be so weak, despite his 10-star talent. Popping the pill, he was immediately hit by its awful taste. However, that foulness was instantly forgotten, as his body was engulfed by an intense golden aura. A system alert left him stunned. The pill had just granted him 10 constitution points and 100 experience points, which was enough to instantly boost him to level 2 and grant him 10 free attribute points. As his status updated, a new passive talent kicked in, called Innate Sword Body. This talent signified that a sword had literally formed within his heart, empowering him to learn any sword-related skill without the normal restrictions. A smirk of satisfaction spread across Su-ming's face. Now, this was the kind of overpowered talent a 10-star rating should have. Leveling up was his cheat code for unlocking new skills. Totally hyped, he decided this was it. He was going to unleash his true power in the beginner's dungeon. He soon arrived at the entrance zone for the first academy's starter dungeon, a bustling plaza swarming with students and shimmering portals. A group of his classmates suddenly rolled up on him. It was the exact same crew that had been clowning on his class just the day before, and now they were desperate to party up with him. They started gassing him up, praising his 10-star talent and the principal's gift, acting like the dungeon would be a total cakewalk with him leading the charge. They pitched how their classes could support his swordsman weaknesses, a transparent ploy to leech off his strength and cruise to an easy victory. The sheer hypocrisy was disgusting. Su-ming shut them down cold, making it crystal clear that he already had a squad. His words reached Ji Zhao, who walked over, looking completely thrown when she heard he'd already formed a group. She'd shown up early specifically to be the first one to ask him. Su-ming, looking a little awkward, tried to explain. He claimed his goals weren't about chasing common rewards and that he didn't want to see her get hurt, but deep down, he locked away his true intention. He was going to challenge this dungeon entirely on his own. As Ji Zhao was trying to process this, they were cut off by a student with blue hair and an overconfident smirk. This was Yan Shi, a 9-star scout demon hunter, who formally introduced himself and invited Su-ming to join his team. Su-ming recognized him from his past life. Without a second of hesitation, he rejected the offer flat out. Before the situation could escalate, Ji Zhao stepped in, linking her arm with Su-ming's and making it obvious they were already a team. That move was enough to make the other students back off with a few mumbled apologies. Once the crowd finally scattered, Su-ming gave Ji Zhao a grateful look. She was always so reliable. He then glanced at the clock. He saw that the start time was closing in. At that exact moment, a colossal blue portal began to swirl into existence. A voice boomed out, officially announcing the beginning of the 127th Beginner's Dungeon Challenge. From the portal, a holographic projection of Director Wang flickered to life, looking like he'd just woken up. He apologized for having overslept, then explained the rules for the mandatory one-day trial. He noted that every student was already registered, and that inside, they would rack up points based on their individual contributions. He strongly advised everyone to form teams to maximize their chances of survival and clear the challenge before the timer ran out. While the director was talking, Ji Zhao turned around to find Su-ming, but he was already gone. She looked around, totally baffled. The instant the dungeon was declared officially open, a single figure launched himself into the portal. The crowd absolutely erupted when they realized the lone challenger was the 10-star student himself, Su-ming. As Su-ming stepped into the dungeon, a powerful wave of nostalgia washed over him. He remembered this feeling from his first life, a chaotic mix of fear and adrenaline. A mighty voice then resonated through the air, welcoming the rookies. It explained that the dungeon was a place of both grave danger and incredible opportunity, and that to escape, they had to defeat the normal boss. The voice also hinted at a path of greater difficulty, one that promised far superior rewards. With a look of absolute resolve, Su-ming set his new goal. In this life, he would conquer the most extreme challenge. He would destroy the dungeon's ultimate hidden boss. He materialized in a dense jungle bathed in moonlight, The system identified it as the Raging Tide Forest, an F-rank zone. He realized instantly that the dungeon's map changed annually, making this environment completely different from the one in his past life. He also knew that the spawn point was random for every challenger, which meant you had to map out your routes on the fly. This meant facing different monsters, and added a whole new level of unpredictability to the game. As he pushed forward, Suman quickly came across a massive, sentient tree monster with a head engulfed in flames and a face carved into its trunk. He remembered that while this creature couldn't move, it used its vines to snatch victims and drag them into the fire. But his mission wasn't to fight every monster that popped up. He was laser-focused on finding the hidden boss. For that reason, he decided it was best to avoid such dangerous enemies and pulled up a holographic map. He carefully plotted his route. The whole reason he had jumped in first was to get a massive head start. He needed to explore the new layout and locate the items required to summon the hidden boss. Even though the map changed every year, he knew the basic strategy to trigger the boss fight would remain the same. He had to act fast, before more students poured in and made gathering the necessary items a nightmare. With his plan locked in, he exploded into action, tearing through the forest at blinding speed. A little later, at 7:30 in the morning, another squad of students breaches the dungeon. A girl with light blue hair and her two teammates scan the silent clearing. They spot no other challengers around and figure the area is safe. That feeling of security shatters when the girl catches a sound from the trees and alerts her crew. Looking up, they see another student burst through the brush and come crashing down near them. The kid, rocking a massive hammer, lands screaming his head off for backup. The new team can only stare in shock as the cause of the chase emerges two gigantic monster rats with glowing red eyes. The moment they recognize the bloodthirsty rats, the students' courage crumbles. Overcome with panic, they decide to split up and run for their lives. Back at the plaza, the real danger of the trial slams home at 7:31 a.m. A real-time update flashes over the portal, announcing that 3 challengers have been devoured by the blood rats. The highest-ranking student to go down was a 6-star named Lide. Jiao, who's still trying to form a team, is floored seeing a 6-star student get wiped out so quickly. She urgently shouts for everyone to speed up their team formations, warning them that the people inside are in deep trouble. Meanwhile, inside the Raging Tide Forest, the situation is absolutely grim. The blue-haired girl who was chased is now running for her life, wounded and all alone. In the chaos, she was separated from her companions and has completely lost her bearings. As she tries to figure out where she is, she senses another presence. She glances up to see the silhouette of a massive, ape-like monster perched in the trees. The creature drops to the forest floor, its glowing red eyes glaring at her with pure evil. Paralyzed by terror, the girl can only watch as the giant beast lunges right at her. In her last moment, she shuts her eyes tight and screams for someone to save her. Then, a flash of red light zips right past her. With blinding speed, Su Ming appears, his crimson black steel sword becoming a blur as he strikes the ape monster. Panic completely consumed the newly awakened students, who found themselves scattered and hopelessly outmatched. One horrified student cursed his terrible luck, having run into a level 5 bloodthirsty brown bear right off the bat. His complaint choked into a scream as the beast brutally ran him through. The slaughter wasn't confined to one area. Throughout the forest, other students fled from creatures like the level 2 swamp stalker and the level 3 tracker hound. Many of them met the exact same gruesome end. The communication channels were flooded with desperate calls for help. They reported that the teleportation points were completely swarmed by monster hordes and begged for immediate reinforcements that never came. Amidst the carnage, one girl found herself completely alone, surrounded by the still bodies of her teammates. Consumed by grief and fear, she sank into the tall grass, trembling as she remembered her teammates telling her to hide. Not even half an hour had passed since the trial began, and the difficulty was already insane. She doubted any new student could possibly survive this. In another part of the forest, the light blue-haired girl was still reeling from shock. She was cornered by the giant ape monster, just as the beast launched itself at her. A flurry of rapid sword slashes sliced through the air. Su Ming materialized out of thin air. He vaulted over the terrified girl, landing elegantly between her and the monstrous beast. The girl stared at him, starstruck, thinking he was unbelievably powerful and had just one shot at the monster. Overcome with gratitude, she started to recognize him, realizing this had to be the famous 10-star student, Su Ming. Su Ming kept a cool expression, letting on that he was just passing by. Then he made it crystal clear he couldn't save her a second time, revealing that the monster wasn't dead yet. The blue-haired girl was stunned to hear the creature was still alive and spun around to see its menacing shadow looming behind her. Panicked, she decided to make a run for it and find reinforcements. Now alone with the beast, Su Ming calmly activated his Eye of Perception. A system panel appeared, revealing the monster's true identity, a mutated ape king. It was a level 3 ferocious beast with incredible strength and constitution, but with seriously low agility. Realizing he was facing a mutated monster, Su-ming understood why it had survived a direct hit from his silver-grade weapon. The mutated Ape King recovered and launched itself into the air, bringing its massive fists down in a devastating attack. Su-ming, however, dodged the blow effortlessly. He noted with a slight smile that the monster's speed wasn't terrible, and decided to test its power, tapping into the skills he inherited from his past life. He opted to use the third one, Hidden God's Step. A system notification pinged, breaking down how this new tech skyrocketed his speed by 50%, making him completely immune to damage and impossible to target while it was active. The only catch? It was a massive stamina drain. A surge of teal energy erupted around Su-ming as he blinked out of existence, instantly reappearing directly behind the baffled, mutated Ape King. The beast roared, spinning to lash out, but Su-ming was already gone in another flash of light, watching from above as the monster stumbled, completely exposed. Su-ming was already over it. This fight was just boring and totally one-sided. The mutated Ape King could only stare in raw terror at Su-ming's silhouette, which was perfectly reflected in its fear-filled eyes. As he geared up for the final move, ending the game, Su-ming unleashed a single devastating strike. It shredded the monster clean in two. Right on cue, a system notification confirmed his victory as the monster's body dissolved into data particles. A loot screen popped up. He'd scored a low-tier bronze-rank individual skill scroll. Standing over the digital dust of his foe, he figured that even though the skill wasn't top tier, it was a decent enough reward, especially for a noob dungeon. Then, a blinding golden light engulfed him, and a massive First Blood title materialized in front of him. An announcement blasted through the entire dungeon, declaring that a level 2 swordsman had just landed the first kill on the mutated Ape King, claiming the First Blood title. All across the dungeon, students who were just trying to survive were absolutely floored by the notification. As a reward, every single player was gifted a small healing potion. One wounded girl clutched the potion that appeared in her hand, letting out a heavy sigh of relief. The students immediately started speculating about who this mystery swordsman could be. Some immediately assumed it had to be the 10-star student, Su-ming. Others argued it might be a different master of the blade, but everyone agreed that this feat gave them a sliver of hope that the dungeon could actually be beaten. Back in his clearing, however, Su-ming was starting to panic. He had totally spaced on the public title system. Realizing this could expose his true power level, he resolved to be way more careful and planned to use his full concealment ability. He needed to hide all his future achievements. He was also shocked that after a full 30 minutes, he was the first person to kill even one monster. Pushing deeper into the forest, he suddenly froze in his tracks. A pack of level 3 dire wolves burst from the undergrowth, their green eyes glowing with a threatening light. Su-ming just cracked a confident smile. Recognizing these wolves as prime mobs for grinding experience, he decided this was the perfect opportunity to test out his brand new sword skill. He had already used his unique talent, Universal Ascension. By upgrading the bronze scroll from the ape, the system had triggered a skill sublimation. It transformed the technique into something new and far deadlier, creating a low-tier silver skill called Drawing Slash. It was a technique that let him sheathe his blade, focus his entire being, and then unleash a catastrophic strike in one seamless motion. As the wolves let out a collective howl, Su-ming unleashed his newfound power, a massive, crescent-shaped wave of blue energy. It crashed down upon the advancing pack. The colossal wave of power tore through the wolves with devastating force. In a brutal, bloody scene, Su-ming's Drawing Slash decapitated and tore apart the entire pack, granting him a huge chunk of experience for each kill. By 9:30 in the morning, he stood alone in the now silent clearing. The ground was littered with the digital remains of his foes as he watched a system notification appear with a satisfied grin. It confirmed he had rocketed to level 9 and earned the title Legend of the Hungry Wolf. He acknowledged that his strategy of using long-range Iaido-style slashes was the most efficient method for clearing out low-level mobs. He performed the technique again, sheathing his sword and channeling his intent, building up energy, locking onto his target with a determined gaze. He unleashed another immense strike. A second massive energy wave descended, poised to annihilate another group of wolves. This time, however, his attack was met with some serious resistance. To Su-ming's complete shock, his powerful slash was batted away in a blast of smoke and fire. From within the chaos, a much larger figure emerged. It was a hulking, bipedal wolf monster with glowing eyes, which the system identified as the level 10 Wolf King leader, and it was staring him down with absolute malice. While Su-ming was power leveling at an insane rate, the other students were just now getting their act together. At 8:30 a.m., a full hour after the dungeon opened, teams were just beginning to form. They started pouring through the portal, ready to launch a counterattack. Battle cries rang out as the freshly formed groups, bolstered by the main force of students, finally began to push back the monster hordes. One of those very teams was already trapped in a desperate struggle. A blue-haired student rocketed forward, his blade a blur as he sliced into a gargantuan mutated rat to save a fallen teammate. He and his ally could only stare in shock and relief as a cascade of experience points washed over them from the kill. A system notification flashed into view, confirming they had successfully taken down a mutated field mouse. The team exploded in celebration. Their hope totally reignited. They felt that with the main force arriving and healing potions on hand, victory was finally within their grasp. One of the students even started crying with joy, having finally leveled up. But their moment of triumph was violently cut short by a new, shocking broadcast that boomed throughout the entire dungeon. The system announced that another First Blood title had just been claimed, this time for slaying a leader-class monster. The details of the announcement left every single student inside the dungeon absolutely floored. The player who pulled off this insane feat was a level 9 fisherman. The reward was the title, Leader of Leaders. Shocked whispers immediately started to spread like wildfire. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. How could someone with a non-combat, life skill profession be so overpowered, let alone have already hit level 9? The scene rewinds 10 minutes, pulling back the curtain to reveal the identity of this mysterious fisherman. It was Su Ming, who had been using his total concealment skill to disguise his true class all along. Before he took down the leader Wolf King, the battle was absolutely ferocious. Su Ming's devastating slash came crashing down on the Wolf King, but the beast was unbelievably agile, narrowly twisting away from a direct hit. Even so, the attack still connected, tearing open a deep, bloody wound and carving a massive chunk out of its health bar. Without hesitating, Su Ming vaulted into the air, and with jaw-dropping speed, he plunged his sword downward in a final, decisive blow. The system confirmed his victory. He had slain the silver-backed Wolf King, earning 500 experience points, just enough to launch him to level 10. His skill proficiency also skyrocketed, and he scooped up some seriously valuable loot, an iron-cutting clawbone, and the Wolf King's heart. This victory was the trigger for that dungeon-wide Leader of Leaders announcement. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the woods, Yandine and his two friends were also locked in a desperate battle against an entire wolf pack. Utterly exhausted and caked in blood, they finally managed to defeat the last monster. One of Yandine's companions heaved a sigh of relief, thankful that the attack buff scroll, the global reward for the Leader of Leaders title, had arrived at the perfect moment to save them. He then started talking about the mysterious level 9 fisherman who'd earned the title. Hearing this, Yandine absolutely lost it, exploding with frustration, unable to comprehend how a player with a life skill class could level up so fast. It felt like a personal insult to dedicated combat players like himself. He then started furiously complaining about his trash tier machete, blaming Su Ming for scamming him out of his money. He griped that if he hadn't been ripped off, he could have bought himself a proper silver-grade weapon. One of his friends could only try to console him, saying that Su Ming's luck was just on another level. But Yandine's frustration boiled over, and he turned on his own teammates, calling them useless and whining that he'd been forced to tank all the damage. He seethed at after killing so many wolves. The shared experience had only pushed him to level 2, making him feel completely ripped off. His rage then snapped right back to Su Ming, vowing that if he ever found him in this dungeon, he would absolutely destroy him. His friends tried to calm him down, but Yandine just shot them a look of pure contempt. At the same time, Su Ming, now level 10, was crouched low in the bushes and examining a new system panel. It was a notification congratulating him for reaching level 10 and activating his main profession change quest. The mission's objective was going to be randomly selected based on his current circumstances. Su Ming knew this was a golden opportunity. He remembered his past life, when he only hit level 10 long after he'd already left the newbie dungeon. Back then, his class change mission had been scaled for a much higher level dungeon that he stood no chance of completing, forcing him to grind all the way to level 15 before even trying, which massively nerfed the rewards. With a burning intensity in his eyes, he realized this life was a completely different game. He'd hit level 10 while still inside the starter zone. His mission would be tailored for this very environment. Just as he predicted, a new notification pinged, assigning him his task. He had to eliminate the guardian of the Red Rock Cave, an elite monster lurking in the Raging Tide Forest. A smile crept across his face, realizing this just made things way simpler. With a look of pure confidence, Su Ming thought to himself that his first class change mission was practically already in the bag. He decided to dump all of his new attribute points directly into agility. The very instant he did, another system window materialized with a reward he never saw coming. The system congratulated him for shattering the 100-point limit in the agility attribute and bestowed upon him a brand new, low-tier platinum passive skill. His class? Sword God. They call him the Sword Martial Master. This insane ability allowed him to equip any sword in existence, completely blowing past level caps and stat requirements. The scene flashes to a conference room at the prestigious First Suanjing Academy, where an assistant is showing Principal Wang a holographic display of the top-performing students from the surrounding cities. The principal's eyes go wide when he sees that Suning, the 10-star prodigy he had poured all his hopes into, is nowhere on the leaderboard. His aide speculates that Suning's sword controller class probably has a weak early game, but he admits it's seriously weird that he hasn't even cracked the top 500. Their discussion is shattered when the door flies open and a woman storms into the room, radiating pure fury. She introduces herself as Ranling, the vice mayor of Suanjing City. She's pissed, pointing out that the principal had been hyping up some legendary 10-star student, but the data proves he's a complete no-show in the rankings. Principal Wang tries to stammer out an excuse, but the vice mayor accuses him of gassing up Suning's power, just to score more qualification slots for the elite Celestial Tower Council. She shoves the tablet forward, making it clear that based on the current data, only Yancey and Santan from the Academy are showing any actual potential. Because of this massive failure, she's decided to cut their qualification slots, from 3 down to just 2. He then dropped a bomb. If the Academy landed in the bottom ranks again this year, they wouldn't get a single token next time around. After dropping that threat, he vanished. Director Wan stood frozen, the 2 tokens in his hand feeling as heavy as lead. He knew the Celestial Tower Council was a make-or-break opportunity for his students and had been counting on Suman to secure an extra slot, not lose one. Now, all he could do was hope Suman would give it his all and not let him down. Meanwhile, deep within the raging tide forest, Suman arrived at the entrance to the Red Rock Cave. He checked his map, confirming this was the right spot for his class change quest. He felt a wave of relief, having dodged any more monsters on the way, and peered into the dark cavern. He had to accept that since he'd never been here in his past life, he had no idea what dangers were lurking inside. With a serious expression, he cautiously stepped into the cave. Instantly, he was ambushed as a creature dropped from the ceiling right in front of him. It was a small, blue-skinned beast with piercing, glowing red eyes. The system identified it as a level 6 gold mining goblin. The goblin glared at him with pure malice before it could even let out a shriek. Suman reacted instantly, his sword a blur of motion as he swung with incredible speed, determined to kill it. He had to silence it before it alerted the rest of the cave. That lightning-fast attack, however, had the exact opposite effect. A system notification flashed, informing him that he had triggered the Goblin Cave alert, and a special goblin mode was now active. Suman froze, his body tensing up as the grim reality sank in. This class change quest was not going to be easy. Just as he'd feared, a massive horde of goblins poured out from the darkness, their red eyes glowing with a menacing light. As they charged him, the system confirmed his worst fears, announcing that all goblins would now launch a continuous assault against him. Another window explained that goblin mode was a behavioral state, like laziness, filth, or greed. Thrown into a desperate fight for his life, Suman began to carve a path through the swarming mob. He knew that while individual goblins weren't high level, their sheer numbers posed a legitimate threat. As he retreated deeper into the cave, he started to worry if his weapon's durability could even handle it. A fight this long was brutal. While fending off the horde, he spotted a much greater menace lurking in the shadows. A massive elite goblin raised a giant weapon that crackled with raw energy. The monster leaped into the air and brought its weapon down in a devastating smash, forcing Suman to dodge for his life. But the whole attack was a coordinated trap. While Suman was still in the air, goblin archers took aim from the shadows. A storm of arrows rained down on him, and several found their mark, wounding him as he landed. He realized these goblins were shockingly intelligent, striking him at his most vulnerable moment. The onslaught didn't let up. The second he hit the ground, 2 more goblins, armed with daggers, dropped on him from above. He managed to parry their attacks, but the relentless pressure was starting to wear him down. He noticed his mana was draining way too fast. He couldn't keep spamming his powerful Divine Shadow skill for much longer. Now completely surrounded by goblins and their monstrous elite leader, Suman understood just how screwed he was. For any player without OP skills in the early game, fighting them head-on was practically suicide. Even so, a confident smirk crept onto his face. He decided that if a direct approach wouldn't work, he'd have to get creative. Kicking his new plan into gear, he took a massive leap backward, using the cave walls to propel himself out of the horde's reach. He chose to evade first. The goblins were left completely baffled by his sudden retreat. Now concealed behind a large rock formation, Suman watched the monsters search for him with a sly grin, ready to spring his trap. From his hiding spot, Suman launched his counterattack, reappearing on a high ledge above the goblins. He unleashed a massive wave of energy from his blade. The powerful slash ripped through the horde, tearing the smaller goblins apart. With a confident smile, Suman knew his plan had worked. By securing the high ground, He could abuse the long-range advantage of his draw slash. To finish them off, he pressed his assault and fired another attack that annihilated the remaining goblins. He then leaped down gracefully amidst the carnage. The battlefield was now dead silent. The elite goblin leader, the only one left standing, stared in utter disbelief at how its entire squad had been wiped out in an instant. Suman calmly walked toward the wounded monster, its health bar almost empty, knowing there was no escape now. Little did he know, his battle had not gone unnoticed. Outside the cave entrance, one of Yandin's cronies was hiding in the tall grass. He radioed his leader, telling him he'd heard fighting inside the cave. Yandin just dismissed it. He found it absurd that anyone would be reckless enough to challenge a level 7+ zone this early on, but his buddy was dead serious about what he'd heard. In an instant, Yanding's expression shifted as he heard it too, footsteps crunching toward them from the cave's entrance. He and his friend watched as a figure emerged from the blackness, wondering who in their right mind would be grinding monsters in such a high-risk zone. Then, the figure stepped into the light, and Yanding's face froze in utter disbelief. It was Suming, covered in wounds but clearly standing victorious. Spotting the group lurking in the bushes, Suming thought to himself that it was true, what they say you always end up running into your haters. Not even dwelling on their past beef, his mind was on his first class advancement quest. He had to admit, it was a hell of a gamble, but he was now officially level 11. His train of thought shattered when he sensed a sudden movement right behind him. Yanding, completely consumed by resentment, launched a sucker punch from behind. With almost lazy grace, Suming sidestepped the pathetic swing, without even a backward glance. Yanding was shook, seeing his ambush fail so spectacularly. Seething with rage, he ordered his two cronies to fan out and surround Suming, cutting off any escape. With his backup in place, Yanding stomped up to Suming, blaming him for every loss he'd suffered that day and acting like it was bad luck that brought them to the same dungeon. Suming just stared at the trio with a look of pure, unfiltered boredom. Yanding kept running his mouth, trying to provoke him, suggesting he ought to be terrified right now. Suming just tilted his head and asked, "And you are, who?" Yanding was left speechless, the humiliation hitting him like a truck when he realized Suming didn't even remember him. The rage absolutely consumed him, thinking Suming had forgotten taking 5,000 adventurer coins from him. Screaming in frustration, he ordered his friends to attack, and the three of them charged forward. Suming remained perfectly calm, thinking it was absurd to resort to violence, just because he couldn't recall their names. Then, a cocky smirk spread across his face as he lifted his sword. He decided this was the perfect opportunity to test out his new toy. With a slight grin, he summoned his blade, which began to pulse with a swirling, crimson energy. In the next moment, he unleashed his new technique, sword control. The blade rocketed from his grip and soared through the air on its own, moving at an insane speed. Before Yanding and his lackeys could even process what was happening, the energy-infused sword tore through them in a flash of red light. All three bullies were sent flying, screaming in pain as they crashed to the ground, defeated in a single, brutal instant. Suming just grinned, satisfied, with the raw display of his newfound power. Yanding, bleeding on the floor, could only stare in absolute disbelief. He recognized the technique as sword control and was completely floored, unable to comprehend how it was possible as the blade hovered menacingly. Yanding knew that was an advanced skill. A swordmaster shouldn't be able to pull that off this early in the game. In his mind, Suming recalled the skill's true origin. He'd looted a sword control scroll after taking down the elite goblin. Then, he used his unique talent, Universal Ascension, to upgrade the low-tier scroll into a legit, usable skill. He was hyped not just because the technique was OP, but because it perfectly maintained his public image as a swordmaster, helping him keep his true mythic class on the down low. But his thoughts quickly turned to an even bigger prize. After clearing his first class advancement quest, he had received a blueprint to the hidden location of the final chest. Standing over his fallen enemies, he pulled up the mysterious blueprint on a golden, holographic display. As its contents were revealed, Suming's confident smirk completely evaporated, replaced by a look of total shock. The contents of the hidden map left him at a loss for words. The coordinates for the hidden treasure were in the Red Rock Cave, Part 2. He was immediately pissed off, wondering why the hell he had to go back to that same cave. His confusion only deepened when he read the map's bizarre subtitle, Goblins, Commerce, and Life, something he couldn't make any sense of. Meanwhile, at 11:30 in the morning, in another part of the forest, a totally different scene was unfolding. A team of 3 girls was celebrating their victory after a brutal battle against a massive monster. One of them, already at level 7, sighed in relief. Her friend beside her acknowledged that they owed their success to their 7-star teammate, a girl with light green hair named Fen Fen, who had basically carried them through the entire fight. With the battle won, One of the teammates eagerly dashed off to gather the loot. Fen Fen turned to her other companion to check if she was all right, and she gave her a thumbs up, saying she was fine. But a second later, Fen Fen's expression twisted into one of pure shock. She whipped her head around, confused, and noticed that their third teammate, the one who'd gone for the loot, had vanished into thin air. A cold panic started to creep in as Fen Fen scanned the clearing. The monster's body was already dissolving, but her friend was nowhere to be seen. There were no signs of a struggle, not a single track left on the ground. Their teammate had been standing right there just a moment ago. Then, her eyes flew wide with horror as a terrifying realization slammed into her. A blood-curdling scream tore through the forest. The golden blueprint Su Ming had scored unlocked a seriously disturbing bestiary entry titled Goblin Life. It broke down how goblins lived in tribes, lurking in dark places, led by chiefs and shamans. The system detailed their horrifying method for maintaining a high birth rate, capturing female creatures. By any means necessary, flashing gruesome images of students being captured. Su Ming flinched in disgust, absolutely floored by how twisted the goblins in this timeline were. After pulling himself together, he followed the blueprint's coordinates. Moments later, a notification confirmed he'd reached the designated spot, but he found himself standing in a dense, eerily silent forest. He glanced around, confused. The map clearly said, Red Rock Cave, Part 2. Yet, there wasn't a single cave in sight, making him wonder if the coordinates were bugged. He stood perfectly still, trying to solve the puzzle. Then, a thick fog began to creep in, completely obscuring his vision. Sensing something was dead wrong, he activated his perception eye. His vision sharpened, cutting through the illusion and instantly spotting a massive, rat-like monster that had been hiding in plain sight. The creature flinched, shocked that its cover was blown. Realizing the trick, a confident smirk spread across Su Ming's face. He understood that the name Red Rock Cave, Part 2, was a deliberate misdirection to make adventurers search for a physical cave. The real entrance wasn't a visible cavern at all. It was a brilliantly camouflaged illusion, protected by the monster. After shattering the mirage, Su Ming discovered the real entrance led down into a subterranean cave and leaped into the hidden opening. As he descended, he saw the flicker of fire below and realized the goblins used the smoke to conceal the entrance. He landed safely. Inside a huge cavern, with a grim expression, he spotted a lone goblin scout and decided against attacking. He remembered that killing even one would trigger goblin swarm mode and alert the entire nest. He reminded himself he was just here for the treasure and needed to play it smart. But as he moved deeper, he found the lifeless body of Fen Fen. Su Ming understood she had been ambushed. After falling for the smoke trap, he scowled with revulsion, thinking these creatures were just as disgusting as the bestiary described. Then he heard desperate screams up ahead. He saw another student. A girl with short purple hair was cornered by several goblins. She was still alive, and a practical thought crossed Su Ming's mind. He considered using her as a distraction to make his treasure hunt easier. He even thought he might have to let her die, telling himself it was her own fault for not being strong enough. Just as he resolved to abandon her, the girl let out one last, desperate plea, begging to be saved, and offering a huge reward. She also revealed that her older sister was the vice leader of the Yan Nan group. Hearing that, Su Ming's eyes widened in shock as he realized who she was. In that instant, the goblins lunged to attack the terrified young woman. Su Ming intervened at the last possible second. He launched his sword, which flew through the air, leaving trails of red energy before slamming into the ground. It sent the monsters flying backward. He then vaulted over the stunned creatures and landed beside Yan Juning. Confidently, he activated his sword control ability. He recalled his weapon, which pulsed with an intense red energy. As he prepared an unsheathing slash, he unleashed the attack, and a massive, non-lethal blast of light engulfed the entire area. His plan was based on what he'd read before. Goblins had a severe weakness to intense light. Taking advantage of that, Su Ming grabbed the shocked Yan Juning and helped her up so she could escape. He knew that, as long as he didn't kill a single goblin, the flash would drive them away without activating the swarm mode or alerting the nest. They both ran until they reached a safe distance. Looking back, Su Ming confirmed his theory was correct, as the disoriented goblins didn't follow them. Yan Juning, exhausted but safe, blushed as she thanked him and introduced herself. Su Ming then remembered the photo his sister had shown him earlier and confirmed she was Yan Nan's younger sister. Still, he showed no interest. He coldly ignored her thanks and prepared to leave. Yan Juning tried to offer him a reward and again mentioned her powerful sister. But Su Ming shut down any offers and made it clear she should first worry about getting out of the dungeon alive. When she pleaded with him not to leave her, Su Ming was blunt, stating he had already saved her once, and that her lack of strength would only slow him down. Despite those harsh words, when he consulted his treasure map again, he was surprised to see that she had followed him. He ignored her and pointed to a glowing spot on the map, indicating the treasure was buried. Right there. While Yan Juning nervously watched their surroundings, worried the goblins would return, Su Ming started digging. After a moment, he announced he'd found it. He unearthed a large, silver-quality chest. He knew this was the highest-level chest in the newbie dungeon, but he planned on using his universal ascension talent to juice its quality by activating his skill. The chest erupted in a brilliant golden light that left Yang Juning completely stunned. Sumin held the transformed prize and confirmed it was now a low-grade gold-quality loot box. He knew these things were basically a lottery, with a high chance of dropping powerful items, skills, or gear. Flashing a confident smirk, he popped open the chest, wondering what treasures awaited. Yang Juning watched in awe as an intense light exploded from within. 2 items materialized, an ornate, golden shoulder guard, and a gleaming gold scroll. A notification identified the rewards as 1 piece of the Shadow Stream set and a Soul Healer skill scroll. Suman checked out his haul from the golden chest. His initial hype quickly faded, replaced by straight-up disappointment. While the armor was a decent drop, he groaned, seeing that the platinum-grade Soul Healer scroll was totally useless for his class. Noticing his frustration, Yang Juning nervously suggested that maybe the scroll appeared because she was nearby. Sumin shot her a confused look, and she, blushing, revealed her awakened profession was a 7-star soul healer. That revelation left Sumin absolutely speechless. Right after, a system notification announced that Yang Juning had joined his party, and he was now the party leader. Meanwhile, in another part of the dungeon, a far darker scene was playing out as one student was brutally murdered by another player. A system panel displayed the killer's objective, a main class change quest that required him to kill 50 players, with his current count at 33. After finishing his victim, the killer, a student from Wujing Academy, smirked cruelly and scouted for his next target. That target was Ji Yao. Fueled by rage and covered in blood, Ji Yao refused to become just another victim, summoning a skeletal warrior to defend herself and fight back. Chaos was ripping through the entire dungeon. At 12:30 in the afternoon, a massive explosion erupted from the ground, forcing a terrified Ji Yao to run for her life. After managing to escape, she was spotted desperately scrambling up a steep cliff. She found a small ledge and hid there, cautiously watching, as she tried to survive the brutal ordeal. However, the murderous student from Wujin Academy was prowling the area below. The attempt to hide failed when her foot slipped, sending a few loose stones clattering down. The killer's head snapped up instantly, his sharp eyes spotting her hiding place. With incredible speed, he launched himself up the cliff face, landing directly in front of a shocked Ji Yao. He attacked instantly with his massive weapon. Ji Yao barely managed to dodge the swing, but she was still grazed and left wounded. The killer landed easily on the narrow ledge, looking surprised that a girl like her had survived for so long. He continued to mock her, claiming she'd wasted his time, though he admitted she had some skill and that maybe the Suanjing Academy wasn't completely useless. Wounded and furious, Ji Yao demanded to know why a student from the neighboring Wujing Academy had come to their dungeon just to slaughter innocent people. With a sadistic grin, the attacker explained there was no special reason. He showed her his system interface, revealing his level 10 class change mission required him to kill 50 players. Ji Yao was paralyzed with horror. The killer explained that he couldn't pull off a massacre like this in his own city's dungeon, so he had taken a private jet over here. Cruelly, he stated that, if she wanted to blame someone, she should blame her own academy for being the weakest among several cities. He compared her school to something soft and easy to crush and charged at her again. Desperate, Ji Yao summoned a skeletal warrior to block the attack. However, her effort was futile. The killer scoffed at her flimsy summons and shattered the skeleton with a single powerful blow, continuing his relentless assault against the now defenseless Ji Yao. The Wujing Academy student declared that he wouldn't let Ji Yao escape again, and unleashed a deep red spinning attack called the Bloody Leaf Flying Stab. Just as the deadly blade was about to hit her, a green arrow shot out of nowhere and deflected the blow. The killer roared in fury, demanding to know who interfered. From the trees, a group of students emerged. Their leader, Yancy, stepped to the front and made it clear they were covering for Ji Yao. She recognized her classmates, who had come to help her. Yancy knocked an arrow to his glowing bow, ready to attack again. Meanwhile, at 12 noon in another section of the forest, Suman completed his objective by handing the system the treasure fragments he had gathered. A notification immediately confirmed his main class change mission was complete. It was done, and he had ascended to his first class change as a sword god. The promotion juiced him with a massive power spike, granting him 10 extra points in all his stats and a buff to his mythic talents effect. The sword body origin had evolved, doubling his strength, speed, and raw mastery with a blade. Now, on a whole other level, a fresh wave of confidence washed over Su Ming about his plan to challenge the dungeon's hidden boss. He turned to Yan Juning and passed her the Soul Healer skill scroll. A notification pinged, confirming she'd successfully used it as a brilliant light engulfed her. As she learned the new ability, its details flashed on the system panel. The skill was called Soul Reinforcement, a high platinum-grade ability. When activated, it burned soul power to increase experience gain by 200%. The EXP boost applied to all party members. Both Su Ming and Yan Juning were absolutely floored. Su Ming couldn't believe her insane luck, randomly snagging a god-tier leveling skill. Realizing the colossal opportunity staring him in the face, a sly grin crept across Su Ming's lips. He had a change of heart, deciding he would help her clear the newbie dungeon after all. Yan Juning was overcome with joy at his decision. As she celebrated internally, she thought that someone who could solo the Goblin Cave was a far more reliable protector than the mercenaries her sister hired. Su Ming sighed to himself. Even though he couldn't stand rich young ladies who used money to take shortcuts, he knew he couldn't just pass up the advantage offered by such a broken ability. Just then, a message from Jijiao buzzed, and Su Ming received it instantly. Seeing the notification, he was a little thrown. He opened the message, wondering why she would contact him in such a perilous situation. Meanwhile, the kid from the other academy was still mercilessly plowing through Ji Yao's teammates, taking them out one after another. In the middle of the chaos, Yanxi also launched an attack on him, but the enemy dodged it with ease. Yanxi was completely stunned. He couldn't process how someone could evade his offensive with such precision. At the same time, the aggressor closed in on Yanxi and another member of Ji Zhao's crew who was holding an enormous sword. Seeing him approach, pure dread washed over everyone. Without hesitation, he unleashed his technique, Bloody Blade Flying Stab. It smashed into one of the teammates' heads, finishing him on the spot. Watching their allies drop one by one, Yanxi and Ji Zhao began to spiral. Ji Zhao understood that their opponent was on another level entirely. Yanxi also noticed that all of their companions had already been wiped out. Ji Zhao couldn't believe Wujing Academy had such a powerful awakened. Yanxi recalled the intel he had researched. Before entering the dungeon, among the most notable awakened who used swords, there was a prodigy from the neighboring city of Buyan. His name was Li Chengwang, a 10-star talent with a hidden profession called Sword Maniac. At that moment, the young man lifted his weapon and advanced on Yan Shi and Ji Zhao. It was him, Li Chengwang. As he approached, he sneered, noticing only the two of them remained, and grumbled that he had wasted too much time since his progress still hadn't hit its target. He had already taken out 35 people. Yanxi, clutching his bow, understood that as a ranged fighter, he stood no chance, not without keeping his distance. Ji Zhao, from behind him, admitted that her magical energy was completely drained, and she couldn't summon any more spirits to defend them. Yanxi asked grimly if they could still expect reinforcements. Ji Zhao checked her system panel and saw she'd gotten no reply from Su Ming. Seeing that, she knew no help was coming. Li Chengwang looked at them, laughed at their utter helplessness, and then charged at full speed. He intended to eliminate the archer first, since he had been the biggest nuisance. In that instant, Ji Yao threw herself in front of Yanxi to protect him. However, Li Chengwang was on her in a blink, slamming into Ji Yao's weapon and wounding her. He scoffed, thinking she was getting way ahead of herself. Someone so weak had no business protecting others. As he raised his sword to strike again, a blade descended from the sky at blistering speed and blocked his blow from behind. Ji Zhao heard her name being called and immediately recognized who had arrived. Su Ming had appeared on the scene. He declared that she had the ability to save everyone. As he walked forward, he remembered that in his past life, Ji Yao had saved his. Ji Yao, seeing him, was shocked because she had warned him not to come, that this place was far too dangerous. But Su Ming kept advancing on the enemy, determined to protect her in this life. He activated his sword control ability and called his weapon back to his side. Li Chengwang recognized that he was the famous sword controller. Fueled by a 10-star rage, Su Ming blasted forward, absolutely convinced this was the guy who had injured Ji Zhao. From a distance, Ji Zhao and Yanxi were completely stunned, their minds blown by the sheer level of the fight unfolding before them. Yanxi knew that with some ranged support, they'd actually have a chance to win. In that exact moment, a surge of healing energy washed over them both. Their wounds began to knit themselves shut, and as they looked back, they saw Yan Juning. She introduced herself as Su Ming's teammate, explaining she was a soul healer. As she mended their injuries, the effort began to drain her, and she had to sit down to recover her strength. Yanxi realized having a dedicated healer on the team was a total game changer. Yan Juning admitted she hadn't fully mastered her abilities yet and just needed a little more time. The revelation shocked Ji Zhao. He vividly remembered Su Ming swearing he'd never team up with anyone, yet here was a partner. A moment later, Yan Juning pushed through her fatigue and resumed healing. Yan Shi pressed her to be quick, stressing how dangerous it was for Su Ming to face such a powerful enemy one-on-one. But Yan Juning simply replied that they had nothing to worry about. Su Ming was on another level entirely. Meanwhile, Su Ming was unleashing a merciless barrage of attacks against Li Chen Wang, driving him back step by agonizing step. Li Chen Wang, desperately parrying, finally started to take the fight seriously. He realized Su Ming wasn't just some run-of-the-mill sword controller. The kid's footwork was insane. After forcing him back, Su Ming abruptly stopped his assault. Li Chen Wang let out a wild laugh, admitting that Su Ming's strength had completely shattered his expectations. He declared that this was the day they would settle it, to see who was stronger, him, the 10-star sword maniac from Buyan City, or Su Ming, the 10-star sword controller from the Suanjing Academy. Hearing that name, a memory sparked for Su Ming. In his past life, this man was a legendary figure, though Su Ming had never met him personally. But in this life, their paths had crossed far sooner. Without an ounce of hesitation, he shot forward again, determined to find out whose blade was faster. In a blur of motion, both warriors unleashed a torrent of simultaneous attacks. Amidst the chaotic exchange, Li Chen Wang dodged a strike, created a sliver of space, and launched his bloody leaf flying stab technique once more. Seeing the deadly leaves hurtling toward him, Su Ming thought the attack was a dishonorable cheap shot. He fluidly used his own sword to deflect and bat away the incoming projectiles. Witnessing this display, Li Chen Wang let out a cackle, boasting that the hero had walked right into his trap. As he spoke, he launched another attack, causing his sword to begin circling around our protagonist. With this technique, he explained, the energy from his bloody stab could completely immobilize his target. He then lunged, delivering a final blow, utterly convinced the hero was finished. Our protagonist dodged the attack with ease. However, Li Chen Wang charged in again, and once more, the young man calmly sidestepped, signaling that it was his turn now. He then used his sword control ability, calling his weapon back into his grasp. As it flew toward him, he locked eyes with Li Chen Wang and declared he wanted to see how he'd defend himself without a weapon. The instant he finished speaking, he unleashed a vicious slash that slammed directly into his rival's body, injuring him and sending blood gushing from his arm. Despite the searing pain, Li Chen Wang, his face twisted in a furious snarl, raised his sword and charged the hero, roaring that Su Ming was now unarmed as well. Noticing the attack coming from behind, our protagonist activated the Divine Shadow Step and began to effortlessly weave around every single lunge. Seeing his attacks miss again and again, Li Chen Wang desperately used his 5 chaotic shadow blades technique. Even so, the hero continued to evade every single strike with his unbelievable speed. Li Chen Wang became enraged, realizing his opponent's agility had suddenly and dramatically increased. While he was still processing this, our protagonist closed the distance and asked for his forgiveness, explaining that his sword had already returned. In that exact same moment, Yanxi and Jijiao's healing was complete. The second Yanxi was back on his feet. He sprinted towards the hero at full speed, screaming that he was on his way, and for Su Ming to just hold on. However, when he arrived and saw the battlefield, he froze in place. The fight was already over. Li Chen Wang was sprawled on the ground, utterly defeated, while our protagonist calmly walked away from his victory. Seeing him, Jijiao commented that Su Ming was an absolute monster. Yan Shi, in total shock, pointed out that in the short time it took for them to get healed, he had already beaten such a powerful foe. But in that instant, Yan Juning screamed in terror, yelling at them to look behind him. When the hero spun around, he discovered Li Chen Wang had staggered back to his feet and was lunging from behind, screaming that he finally had his opening. The sneak attack blindsided everyone. Jijiao cried out in pure anguish as he watched Li Chen Wang's sword slice deep into the hero's back, unleashing his ultimate skill. The rushing forest quick blade explodes, unleashing a crimson aura that completely engulfs the battlefield after the strike connects. Li Chen Wang stares down our hero and declares, "Welcome to my formation." With that, Jijiao bolts toward the deadly array. She's desperate to save her mink, but Yangxi grabs her hand, stopping her cold. "Rushing in now is just throwing your life away," she warns. Panic in her voice, she screams back that even if it means dying, she has to save him. But just then, a voice echoes from inside the formation, our hero's voice, pleading with her to listen. The moment Jijiao hears him, she breathes his name with relief, but he cuts her off, his tone ironclad. "Do not step foot inside this formation." Li Chen Wang unleashes a relentless barrage of attacks, never pausing for a second. The constant onslaught leaves our protagonist's body mangled and his condition critical. And yet, he was still breathing. As he hacks away without end, Li Chen Wang is absolutely seething with rage. He screams, unable to comprehend how, after so many slashes, the hero is still alive. In that very instant, a voice materializes behind him. "Are you so sure you actually hit me?" Startled, Li Chen-Wang realizes something is wrong. That voice didn't come from in front of him. At the same time, the hero's figure before him begins to slowly fade into nothing, consumed by fury. He finally gets it. He'd been fighting a decoy this whole time. The clone completely vanishes, and the real protagonist emerges behind him, sword in hand. "So you finally noticed," he says with unnerving calm. "No matter how you rack your brain, you'd never guess a simple sword controller could pull off a skill like this." In that moment, he activates all 5 pieces of the Shadow Blade set, a low-tier platinum collection. A system notification pops up, Dark Surge. It announces that all his sword techniques will now inflict bonus dark attribute damage that completely ignores physical defense. On top of that, the set's ability, Shadow Clone, creates a phantom shadow for defense. If he takes a hit while it's active, he executes an extra slash equal to 50% of his normal damage. Seeing the complete set on our hero, Li Chen-Wang starts to look genuinely nervous. He stammers that collection sets don't even exist in the beginner dungeon, which can only mean one thing. Our hero had already cleared a certain quest. With a smirk, the protagonist confirms he's already finished the initial class change mission. He then levels his sword directly at Li Chen-Wang, ready to strike. Seeing the attack coming, Li Chen-Wang, a mess of nerves and anger, has to admit that the hero was even faster than him. And just like that, the protagonist's blade tears straight through his body and keeps going, sending blood erupting into the air. As he presses the attack, our hero coldly declares, "Now, I'm going to slaughter you." He unleashes a flurry of consecutive slashes, but suddenly, Li Chen-Wang pulls out an artifact and hurls it forward. As it activates, an impossibly bright light flashes across the entire area. The protagonist instinctively shields his eyes from the blinding glare. From a safe distance, Yancy and Yanjunin recognize the item, their faces etched with shock. Yancy explains it's an emergency escape artifact. It allows a user to bail from a dungeon in a critical moment and costs hundreds of thousands of adventurer coins, a price tag that's basically impossible to afford inside a standard dungeon at this stage. Li Chen-Wang had already used the item to teleport and make his escape. Watching him vanish, our hero comments with a cool demeanor. "Looks like the neighboring city really shelled out a fortune to protect their 10-star genius. They definitely didn't spare any expense." A few hours later, the scene cuts to the director's office. While scanning the dungeon data, a young assistant notices something off, her eyes widening as she sees that a piece of information is wrong. Behind her, the director is slurping noodles. "You got the real-time player rankings yet?" he asks. "No," she replies, explaining, "the logs are showing something else. Multiple players died around the 9 o'clock coordinate, somewhere between 12 and 12:30. The director muses that it doesn't sound too weird, asking if a few squads just ran into some high-level mobs. The assistant clarifies that it wasn't that simple, since the analysis revealed they were eliminated by data from a player who doesn't even belong to their city's region. Hearing this, the director's expression shifts. He concludes that the rival city is probably up to their old dirty tricks again. He orders her to make sure every last one of those logs is saved, in every city. The beginner dungeon is a race to see who can clear it first. It's always been this way. And Suanjing Academy, long considered the weakest, was once again seen as an easy target for others to bully. He then asks about the progress of his own students in the dungeon. The young woman pulls up the data and reports that their progress is solid, as most of the teleportation zones have already been claimed by their students. The grainy live feeds trickling in showed the heavy hitters were already forming massive raid parties. They were already starting to push through the dungeon's boss phases. Leading the charge was none other than the young master of the Sang family, the 8-star magic hammer warrior, Sang Tang. Hearing the update, the director's eyes fixed on the screen, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Just as expected," he remarked. "That young man is overflowing with potential." He recalled that just a few hours prior, Sang Tang was sitting at level 6 on the leaderboard. The regular final boss in this starter dungeon is a level 12 monster. Considering he's rolling with a massive crew, the director figured he had to be closing in on level 10 already. He was counting on him to crush that boss soon and bring some glory back to the academy. Right then, a junior staffer announced that the live ranking data was refreshed. The director immediately strode over to see. The young man reported, "Just as you predicted, sir. Sang Tang is already level 9, knocking on the door of level 10, and he's tied for first place on the leaderboard." The director immediately guessed, "The other one has to be that student, Yangxi." The staffer confirmed he was right, adding that trailing close behind in second and third place were 2 female students. The necromancer, Ji Yao, at level 7, and the spirit healer, Yang Juning, who's already hit level 8. A young woman nearby commented that even the female students were showcasing some incredible talent. But the director's mind was elsewhere. "Have you seen Su Ming?" he asked. She scanned the rankings, then shook her head. He's not listed anywhere in the top ranks, sir. Double check, the director demanded. Find out what level he's at right now. Just then, another student pulled up our protagonist's info, his jaw dropping. The director noticed immediately. Did you find him? What's his level? The student hesitated before answering. He's level 2. Hearing that, the director went completely silent. The aide added that, according to the data, after snagging that first blood, his level hadn't increased even once. The scene flashes back to the dungeon, where our protagonist has just finished off a razor-tusked elite beast. The very instant the monster crumbles to dust, his level skyrockets all the way to 14. Hitting that milestone triggers a system notification congratulating him. On top of the massive level jump, he's also unlocked a hidden cosmetic set. It's a special set for reaching level 14. At his side are Ji Yao and Yanqi, and Ji Yao herself has already climbed to level 8. Checking her own status, she exclaims excitedly that they've leveled up multiple times just by grinding mobs for a little over 2 hours. Yanqi checks his own stats, confidently declaring he's already hit level 10 and is more than ready to challenge the dungeon boss. He explains their insane leveling speed is all thanks to Yang Juning's skill, which boosts the experience points they earn. Yang Juning, who has also reached level 9, smiles and says they should really be thanking Su Ming. He's the one who gave her such a god-tier ability. Ji Yao, buzzing with excitement, exclaims that their current team composition is absolutely insane. They've got healing that literally grants bonus experience, plus Yangxi's pinpoint accuracy from long range. Her own summons can cover the party, and best of all, they have an absolute beast like Su Ming leading the charge. But our protagonist calmly tells her not to exaggerate, saying it was all their own hard work. He plays it cool, acting like he's just tagging along. Ji Yao immediately fires back, telling him not to talk like that. She reminds him that if he hadn't stepped in, both she and Yanqi would have been killed by Li Chenwang's blade. She recalls with awe just how unbelievably dominant he was during that entire battle. She's completely confident that with their current party setup, they can absolutely steamroll the dungeon's regular boss. Our hero agrees with her, but then clarifies that he's not aiming for some basic, run-of-the-mill boss. As he speaks, he pulls out a mysterious key, explaining that he wants to challenge the hidden boss, a foe on a completely different level. The key he's holding is the water ripple key, a drop he got from that elite beast they just took down. Holding it up, he explains that in order to find the hidden boss of this starter dungeon, they first need to solve 3 different riddles. The riddles are guided by system data, and for each one, they need to gather a corresponding item. And right on cue, a notification for the first riddle materializes before them. When the silver moon hangs by the shore, the green waves part, and red armor sleeps in the heart of the cold abyss. Simultaneously, an image of a silver moon materializes in the sky. Our protagonist immediately realizes the activation point has to be connected to it. Since the starter dungeon doesn't have dynamic weather, he deduces it can't be literal. There's only one place where plants grow in the exact shape of that moon. He points towards a nearby lake, stating that the hidden boss's location is right behind its surface. With that, he walks right up to the edge of the water. Moments later, the second riddle appears. The lake's water turns to mist, using iris petals as a guide. Beneath the sunken sand, the armor still holds to the ancient pact. After reading it, he begins to explain that ever since he entered the dungeon, he'd secured the necessary item, the iris flower from the ape monster zone, and fused it with the water wave key. Following the trail of the third riddle, the clue materialized. Hold the star-patterned key. The goal was to reflect it in the lakebed, where 9 waves encircle the base rock, and the knight rests his head upon his sword. Waiting for the light to pierce the murky depths, our hero made his move, just as the ancient text described. The key began to glow, and the crew behind him watched in total awe, wondering how he had solved the puzzles so incredibly fast. Without warning, a massive whirlpool erupted in the lake. The team members froze, their eyes wide with shock. They watched the water churn violently, and moments later, a sword began to emerge from the depths. From the heart of the vortex, a monstrous knight, dripping with water and pure menace, surfaced, clutching the blade. It spoke with a booming voice, guided by an oath and summoned by the starlight. In the instant the hidden boss was summoned, a flood of system warnings slammed onto our protagonist's screen. This hidden boss was the Lake Guardian, a lost knight. The moment it appeared, he immediately invited Yanqi and Ji Yao to his party. He took the lead as captain. The second the group was formed, he urgently ordered them to brace for combat. As everyone snapped into a battle stance, a message flashed, announcing the start of the hidden boss challenge. 15 minutes later, he and his teammates were crouched down, hidden in some bushes. A doubtful Yanqi asked if hiding like this was really the right move. Ji Yao looked equally confused. Forcing a shaky, nervous smile, she suggested they try a different strategy. But our protagonist wasn't paying attention. He tuned out their opinions, his eyes locked on the hidden boss as it blazed through the forest at full speed. It was destroying everything in its path, pointing at the enemy. Our hero told them to get a good look. That knight was riding at a terrifying velocity, and he challenged them. How are we supposed to beat that? The boss's mount had a speed of 500 points. The late guardian, the lost knight, was level 19, with 301 strength, 250 constitution, 102 agility and spirit, 10 luck, and a mount speed of 500. On top of all that, it wore heavy armor with a level 5 mastery. Seeing those stats made everyone nervous. The protagonist explained with a grim tone that even if they combined all 4 of their speeds, they wouldn't even reach half of the enemies. Just then, screams began to rip through the forest. Several players were fleeing in terror after running into the hidden boss. Some were shouting, wondering what kind of monster this was, while others couldn't understand how. A level 19 hidden boss could just appear without any warning. The Lost Knight mercilessly eliminated anyone who crossed its path, and the forest filled with cries and wails. From a safe distance, the protagonist's team watched the horrifying scene unfold. John C., stunned, commented that was already the 3rd wave of nearby players to be completely annihilated. John Juning, terrified, remembered that they were the ones who summoned this boss, and they had to act fast. At that moment, Ji Zhao came running from behind and reported that, following the protagonist's instructions, they had used all of the team's mana potions to prepare the time-delayed trap. Hearing the report, he gave him a sincere thanks and shouted out his next order to Yan Shi and Yan Junin to follow the plan they'd all agreed on. They all yelled in affirmation and moved to their assigned positions. As he advanced, the protagonist thought about how he'd never challenged the dungeon's hidden boss in his past life. In the beginner zone, most newly awakened players didn't dare summon it so soon, and besides, this dungeon could only be completed once in a lifetime, which is why almost no one knew its true form, and only vague clues existed. They were in some old records that he had committed to memory. However, he never expected the boss would be mounted on a creature with 500 speed. To defeat it, they first had to knock it off its horse. Once everyone was in position, Yancey activated his multi-shot skill, launching a hailstorm of arrows at the boss. A volley flew towards it, but the Lost Knight drew its sword and dodged most of them. The few that actually hit its armor didn't cause any damage, thanks to its level 5 heavy armor mastery. Seeing this, Yancey understood that his ranged attacks could barely even touch it. Then a system message appeared, indicating that the Water Guardian had locked onto a new aggro target. After reading it, the team slightly adjusted their positions. From the top of a hill, Yancey announced that he had drawn the boss's attention once again. She gave a sharp nod, her powers flaring to life. Meanwhile, our hero slid into his assigned spot, a faint smirk playing on his lips as he ran through the game plan. First, Yanqi's job was to bait the boss with precision long-range attacks. Second, Yan Junin needed to flood the area with smoke, right where the enemy would pass to completely shatter its line of sight, a nasty trick they'd picked up in the Goblin Caves. Right on schedule, a thick blanket of smoke engulfed the zone, causing the boss to completely lose track of its enemies. The Lost Knight thrashed its weapon around, searching blindly. In that exact moment, skeletal hands erupted from the earth, grabbing hold of its mount's legs. Ji Yao triggered her summoning ability, springing the trap and forcing the boss to struggle just to stay upright. She thought to herself that if he hadn't explained it, she never would have dreamed that a basic summon could be layered into a delayed trap like this, just by swarming it with mobs. Immediately after, more arrows rained down from a distance, while Yan Junin unleashed her spirit absorption magic to slow the enemy to a crawl. The hidden boss was now completely boxed in from all sides. Seeing the opening, our protagonist surged forward with cold resolve, knowing the third step was to completely immobilize the horse. Using the skeleton trap Ji Yao had set, combined with Yan Junin's slowing magic, he knew that without his team's perfectly coordinated setup, he could never take this thing on alone. Seizing the opportunity, he ambushed the Lost Knight from behind. He twisted with incredible force, hoisting it from its saddle and slamming it to the ground, roaring for it to get off its high horse. After it had been a menace for far too long, the knight hit the ground hard but scrambled back to its feet in an instant and locked its eyes on our protagonist. In the distance, his teammates, hidden in the brush, braced for the next move. Seeing the boss finally ripped from its mount, Yan Junin gasped with excitement. "We actually did it. We knocked it down." Ji Yao warned her not to let her guard down, reminding her that this was only phase 1 and everything was still going according to the script. That script had been laid out just 10 minutes earlier. At the time, Ji Yao had been filled with doubt. She pointed out that both she and Yan Junin would burn through all their mana, and even if they managed to knock it down, they'd be too spent to deal any real damage afterward. Our hero had replied with dead seriousness, "That doesn't matter. This is all I need from you." Then, with a confident smirk, he added that when the moment came, he would take care of the rest. Back in the present, The protagonist summoned his sword from his inventory, dropped into an aggressive stance, and shot forward like a bullet. He declared with absolute conviction, "I'm ending this monster." He charged the Lost Knight alone, launching into a head-on battle. The boss reacted instantly, their swords clashing in a shower of sparks. In the next moment, they were trading a furious barrage of blows. The sheer force of their duel radiated through the entire area, so intense that even his distant teammates could feel the shockwaves. Watching the brutal intensity of the clash, Yancey took an anxious step forward, recognizing that the fight was on another level. It blew his mind that Su Ming could go toe-to-toe with a hidden boss of this rank all by himself, and he thought he couldn't just sit back and watch. He still had skills he could use to help. But Ji Yao immediately stopped him, a small smile on her face. She reminded him that they had to trust Su Ming, because he specifically said to leave this part to him, and that they had their own mission to focus on. Meanwhile, our protagonist was unleashing his skill, Divine Shadow Step, on the Lost Knight, striking it over and over again from different directions. Every single move dealt a steady stream of damage to the enemy. Even so, the knight moved with shocking speed, trying to land a counterblow. Our protagonist's gaze sharpened. He blocked the strike and thought with icy calm, "Too slow." In that same instant, he checked its stats. He saw that everything was the same, except for its speed. While mounted, it had 500 points, but now it had plummeted to a measly 55. He realized this was its true speed without the mount's buff. Immediately, he carved a deep slice across the Lost Knight's chest, and concluded with conviction, a hidden boss is nothing special after all. He then executed another powerful attack, aiming to finish it for good. However, its heavy armor allowed the enemy to tank the hit, although the armor's durability was taking a serious nosedive. As he continued his relentless assault, a system notification flashed before his eyes. It showed that his weapon's durability had dropped to 7%. Seeing it, the protagonist's face grew grim. He thought that his sword wouldn't hold out much longer, and on top of that, the enemy's heavy armor trait was massively reducing his damage output. In that moment, the Lost Knight suddenly bolted toward the spot where it had been knocked off its horse. It desperately tried to find its mount, but came up empty. Our hero followed close behind, and in a taunting voice, he made it clear he knew it was trying to get its horse back, because that was its main advantage. But unfortunately for it, his teammates had already taken it far away. At the same time, the protagonist's allies had successfully wrangled the mount and were keeping it far from the fight, with Ji Yao struggling to hold the animal down, screaming at him to stop struggling because they wouldn't let him get away. Yanxi shouted for Yan Junin to keep using his magic, to slow down the struggle. A confident smirk played on Ji Zhao's lips, as he recalled how crucial this mission was, an assignment given to him by Su Ming himself. He flashed back to the moment Su Ming laid out the strategy, telling them that if they managed to knock the horseman's boss off his mount, they were to leave the boss to him and focus entirely on preventing it from getting back on and rejoining the fight. Our protagonist unleashed a volley of ranged slashes that shot directly toward the Lost Knight. Each attack found its mark with deadly precision as he inched forward. The enemy tanked the blows and raised its blade to unleash its gathered water howling blade skill, launching powerful strikes at our hero. He sidestepped them all, thinking wryly that at least the knight still knew a few tricks. Even as he thought this, he continued to weave through every single lunge. The knight charged once more, hoisting its sword high for a killing blow. The protagonist countered by activating sword control, sending his weapon flying to hammer the enemy from every possible angle, racking up continuous damage. In the middle of the onslaught, another notification popped up. Weapon durability had plummeted to 3%. Despite this, he didn't let up, relentlessly pressuring the knight and forcing it into a retreat. At the same time, he checked the durability of the enemy's heavy armor, realizing he couldn't afford to waste any more of his sword's lifespan, not when the armor was so close to shattering. He kept up the multi-directional assault before recalling the sword to his hand. Gripping it firmly, he charged forward again. The Lost Knight lifted its own blade, dodged, and broke through the protagonist's defense, plunging its weapon directly into his chest. The moment it hit, our hero's figure began to slowly fade away. A voice echoed from behind, noting that the technique worked just as well on players as it did on monsters. The body the knight held was a clone, which now vanished completely. The real protagonist materialized behind it, activated his complete gear set, and readied his attack, immensely satisfied with his equipment's power. He immediately triggered sword control again. The blade that had been hovering near the clone erupted into a frenzy, attacking the Lost Knight from all sides. The enemy desperately tried to evade the storm of steel. In that split second, the protagonist appeared at its back and slammed his fist into its armor, declaring, "Heavy armor, broken." Simultaneously, he got a system alert that his weapon's durability had completely run out. Without hesitation, he activated Shadow Blade and unleashed one final attack, stating coldly, "It's over." The scene cuts to the Suanjing Academy, where Director Wang is striding into the communications room. As he arrived, someone remarked that he'd finally shown up, seeing as the other directors were already deep in conversation. He spoke gravely, observing that from the looks of the communication channel, they seemed to have been gathered for some time. Another director shot back that everyone had just arrived, and that he was, in fact, the last one. A second director asked with a provocative tone if the delay was because none of the students from his academy had challenged the boss yet, as was the tradition each year. The clear results always started pouring in after 3 in the afternoon. A third added with a mocking laugh that Suanjin Academy always finished last anyway, so it hardly mattered if he was late to the party. Director Wang replied that he wasn't delayed because of the dungeon, but because he had just received real-time data from inside. He explained that outside, players had infiltrated his academy's beginner dungeon, and that they still hadn't identified the culprit. He then asked with a hard edge in his voice if they might be students from one of the other 3 cities. He added that the logs showed the victims were eliminated by sword skills, and pointed out that Bull Academy's prodigy, Yan Li Chen Wang, was an expert with bladed weapons. At the mention of that name, the director of that academy reacted furiously, demanding he not make accusations without any proof. He claimed his student was currently leading the charge against the final boss in their own dungeon, and that they would clear it in less than half an hour. After that, the other directors also began to report on their own progress. One declared that at Donglin Academy, 3 groups were already challenging the boss. Another confidently assured them that Nangan Academy had already pushed the boss into its second phase, and that if things kept going smoothly, news of their dungeon clear would be arriving any minute. Director Wang took all of this in with a stone-cold, serious expression, thinking about how the other academies were making steady progress against the boss, and how every single second was absolutely vital. Just then, he pulled a token from his pocket, his face growing even more grave, as he considered that if his academy failed to secure the first victory this year, they would only obtain 2 slots left for the Tower Society, the lowest number in its entire history. His expression hardened, realizing the player closest to taking down the boss was Zhang Tang. Everything was riding on him now. The scene cuts back to the dungeon, where students from the Suanjin Academy were locked in a desperate battle against monsters alongside Zhang Tang. They were unleashing everything they had. Zhang Tang roared at them to push forward together, to hold nothing back, and burn every skill they possessed, to annihilate the final boss. The beast they faced was the Raging Forest King, a level 15 behemoth that swatted away every student who got close, spreading a wave of destruction that never stopped. In the heat of the fight, some students began to falter, screaming in pure terror. They knew they were completely outmatched. Their levels were way too low to ever defeat this thing. But Zhang Tang, his eyes fixed on the monster, gritted his teeth. "We can't retreat," he declared, his voice burning with determination. "We've come too damn far." He roared again, a raw cry of ambition. The reward for clearing this starter dungeon had to be his. Standing before the monster, his thoughts flashed back to the texts he'd gotten on his phone earlier. They were from Xiaoman. She had begged him for help. In the messages, Zhang Tang had pressed her, asking what went down, asking if it had anything to do with Su Ming. Xiaoman's reply sent a chill down his spine. Su Ming had hurt her. In that same chat, Zhang Tang demanded to know where she was, promising he'd come for her. Xiaoman's last message was a plea for revenge, asking him to help her get payback. Remembering all of this, a firestorm of rage erupted inside Zhang Tang. He charged the monster, screaming that he would claim the final prize and avenge Xiaoman. But just as he was about to raise his weapon for a devastating strike, the monster suddenly began to fade away. Zhang Tang froze, utterly confused by what was happening. In that same instant, every player in the dungeon received a system notification. As they read it, their jaws collectively dropped. The announcement stated that the hidden boss had been defeated, congratulating the squad responsible for taking it down. It also declared that everyone should prepare for a victorious return home. And then, the scene shifted to Su Ming, who had already taken down the hidden boss, confirming that the fight was truly over. At the same time, one of his teammates, Jihao, glanced at the system alert and let out a confident smirk. "That had to be Su Ming," she stated. "I knew he'd crush it." Back in the real world, the news was spreading like wildfire. The moment the hidden boss fell, the dungeon portal began to glow intensely. In the communications room, where Headmaster Wan was stationed, alongside the directors of the other 3 academies, the same notification flashed on screen. One of them immediately piped up, "Did Li Chen Wan do it?" Another shot back, "No way. It must have been Dongling Academy." The third insisted it had to be the Nangan Academy. Wang turned to check the results, and as he saw his own academy's name displayed on the screen, his eyes bulged with shock. Back with Su Ming, Jihao rushed over to him, absolutely buzzing. That was insane, she exclaimed. At that moment, Su Ming's level had hit 16, jumping 2 whole levels in an instant. The system pinged him with a notification, congratulating him on the achievement. His teammates gathered around him, and Su Ming told them to huddle up so they could divvy up the rewards from the hidden boss before the exit portal opened. Hearing this, Johnsy immediately said he didn't want any of the loot. He was just happy to have leveled up. Yan Junin echoed the sentiment, thanking Su Ming again for saving his life. Jihao just watched them both, as Johnsy kept talking, explaining that, from the moment Su Ming saved them from Li Chen Wang's sword to uncovering the secret of the hidden boss and destroying it, he felt like he hadn't been strong enough to contribute anything. He said that sharing the loot would just make him feel guilty. While Jancy was still talking, a reward notification popped up right in front of him. The captain has assigned teammate, Jancy the Siphon Rot Bow, a weapon that requires level 20, and the Arcane Archer class. Its effect allows the user to consume spiritual energy so that every arrow fired produces a random magical effect. Then, another notification appeared for Yan Junin. The captain assigned her the Soul Heart Necklace, an item whose effect increases the storage limit of soul power and improves absorption efficiency exclusively for the Spirit Healer class. Next, Jihao got her reward, too. The captain granted her the Bloody Armored Undead Summoning Scroll. Once she mastered this skill, she would be able to summon the hidden boss they just defeated, the Undead Knight, in blood armor. The summoned creature's stats would scale based on the player's own attributes. Seeing all their shocked faces, Su Ming just smiled and began to explain about the hidden boss's loot. It was all tied to their unique classes, a sign that he wasn't the only one who recognized them. No, the dungeon itself stamped its approval on them as the team that conquered the boss. He admitted that, without their skills, this whole challenge would have been a total wipe. Right on cue, a voice thundered through the dungeon, congratulating all the challengers for conquering the F-rank dungeon, the Forest of the Raging Tide, and revealed that their total clear time clocked in at 8 hours and 20 minutes. Hearing the announcement, Su Ming signaled to his crew that it was time to bounce. The shimmering exit portal had already materialized behind them. As they started walking, he broke down what happens next. Every time a dungeon is cleared, you enter the settlement phase, he explained, where your contribution rewards get paid out in the real world after you leave. An escape portal would spawn right next to every single player left standing. A wide grin spread across his face as he told them, "You all crushed it. Everyone made it out alive. That's what I call a successful run."